pod bay doors, please, Hal.
The pod bay doors are open. Thank you very much for joining us once again. I'm your host, film critic and film historian for TalkMovieToMe.com, Doug Heller. Here, as always, with my co-host, hopefully without some sort of a metal insecty thing clutched onto his hand or his chest. Jerry Dean Roberts, film critic for ArmchairCinema.com, ArmchairOscars.com, and OverThinkingOscars.wordpress.com. How you doing, Jerry?
Tell me where it is so my uncle will leave me alone.
This Christmas, I've chosen...
You could have put this in October, easily.
I could have put this in October, but I also... It fits because it's set in the week between Christmas and New Year's. So...
and not without reason.
Right, and so... Christmas movie. Boom. Yeah. It is Guillermo del Toro's writing and directorial debut, feature debut, Cronos, from 1992, starring Federico Lupi, who was in all three of Del Toro's Spanish-language films.
And has a long filmography.
He's an Argentinian actor. And Ron Perlman, whom everyone would know from, at the time, Beauty and the Beast, but now Hellboy. This is the
first time that I ever saw Ron Perlman without makeup.
Yeah,
because
it doesn't usually happen.
First time I saw him was in that Sean Connery movie, The Name of the Rose, where he played the Hunchback.
Oh.
And then, of course, Beauty and the Beast. But this is the first time I saw him without makeup.
And then you realized why he always has makeup on.
Yeah.
He's
an attractive guy.
He's a modern day Lon Chaney.
It's one of those films where you're so used to the director having a lot of spit and polish in his work that you've seen Crimson Peak, you've seen Pan's Labyrinth, you've seen Nightmare Alley, you've seen all of these different movies that are so that have you can see the money in it. That you go back to his origin.
Well spent money.
Well spent.
You go back to this and The Devil's Backbone. Wow.
There's a crudity. There's an unpolished.
It's rough. It's as rough as the sands that they take place in.
Right.
And I genuinely admire that about Del Toro. This is actually the only Spanish language movie he set in Mexico.
Yeah.
The other two are set in Franco, Spain.
Right.
So this is the only one that he has ever made in and for his home country.
Right.
Set it in Mexico City.
And the reason that he made it was because he was so disillusioned by the horror films that he was seeing, because so much of horror had become slasher stuff, with characters that were just props. They were just set up to be killed. Um, kind of the Friday the 13th. You just throw in a lot of characters, and their purpose is to be murdered. There's a lot of gore and it's a lot of gore and a lot of blood and a lot of unpleasantness without purpose.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what drew him to this. Because there's no those films. There's no humanity.
Right.
Here, there's a lot of humanity because it's about immortality.
Mm-hmm.
Story being this guy who, in the 15th century, um, builds a device or designs a device that will keep someone alive. Cut forward to 1937, a building collapses, and in it is found a very, very, very old man. And this object disappears for decades.
Mm-hmm.
And there are people looking for it. It is a Cronos device. It attaches to the skin, pierces your skin, injects you with a serum that gives you eternal life. Unfortunately, you have to have blood, drink blood, in order to keep.
Well, there's always a catch.
Well, the devil's got to have his payment,
Right.
And
this thing, the way that Del Toro shoots the inner mechanisms of this thing.
Clocks are a big thing in this movie. Gears and clocks.
Oh yeah, because the man that finds it is an antiques dealer in Mexico City.
Yeah.
And he accidentally activates it.
Yeah.
And
he holds it in his hand and turns the knob.
Yeah.
Even when the spider legs are coming out of it, he's still holding it.
He's like still holding it like, gee, I wonder what it's going to do.
Crunch.
It's like, yeah.
His granddaughter didn't seem all that affected by it. It's just...
See, the thing about his granddaughter,
this same haircut, by the way, keeps showing up. Every time he has a little girl in his movies, he keeps showing up. The same bobbed haircut.
I kind of wish that he had made this later, because the story would have been more about her than the grandfather. And the way that she's written here, the best way I can understand it is she's been struck kind of mute at the death of her parents.
Yeah.
And the only person that she connects with is Jesus, her grandfather.
You don't think she connects with Mercedes?
I think she does, but on a different kind of a level.
Okay.
She'd rather spend time with Jesus. She loves Mercedes. You can tell that very, very clearly, especially when they think Jesus has died.
Right.
But I think this little girl is so traumatized that it doesn't really affect her.
Right.
And because wasn't it was a car accident and she lived but they died.
Yeah.
So like she saw her parents die, and she lit. So she is 6 years old with survivor's guilt. I mean, how much is that going to mess you up?
Yeah.
So
she's well, it's funny because she's got all of that, but she's really reacting like a spectator to what's going on.
Right, and she's not afraid to just be there and help.
Right.
And
Right.
and like actually because she's the one that that kills the other guy.
Right.
Um Smacks him in the head with his own cane.
Mhm.
Which wow.
There's there's a lot to this film. It's a very slender plot, but there's a lot in it.
Right.
You notice,
The
you
story, the plot
notice
isn't much, but the story and the narrative is huge.
because Jesus's motivation for this is that the two people closest to him are much younger than he is.
Hmm.
Mercedes is much younger than he is, and of course his granddaughter. And he sees, I mean, he's what is it? I guess, and he's in his 70s.
Yeah.
He sees that the time is slipping away,
Hmm.
and he won't be with these two people very long. I don't know if the movie ever really gets into his religious status. This is a film that looks very much looks down on religion
Yes.
because Del Toro's an atheist.
And do you know why Del Toro's an atheist?
Because his grandmother was horrible to him.
Yes. His grandmother was, he described her as Carrie's mom on cocaine or
Yeah,
something to that effect. She was so concerned about him that she actually personally did two exorcisms on him at two different times
right.
because she thought he was possessed because he liked uh, monster movies and all this macabre gothic stuff. And yeah, that kind of turned him away.
Yeah,
I can understand.
explains a lot of the stuff in his films.
Yeah, it does.
You know what's funny about his work is that from Cronos on up is that he is a director who works without safety nets.
Oh, constantly.
He is not afraid to just he's going to do what he's going to do.
Yeah.
And he's not afraid of what his audience is going to think. And I like that.
I love that about him, and I I I've seen I've seen all of his films
I have too.
more than once, except Mimic. I saw that once a long time ago, and nah.
That was his entry into I think that was his real entry into Hollywood.
That was his first Hollywood film, and it
Yeah.
was
I liked it a
very
lot.
really.
I like Mimic.
You're the only one. He
I
has
liked Mimic.
he has disavowed it so many times. He hates it because it was taken away from him.
Yeah.
There is
Well, let me put it this way. I liked it when I saw it, but I only saw it when it came out.
right.
So I haven't seen
Um,
it since then.
but then he did. Then he went back and did Devil's Backbone, and he had another shot, and he did Blade 2.
Yeah.
And for reasons, that catapulted him into the the youth culture, at least the up and coming directors. I saw Blade 2 in the theater and haven't seen it since. I didn't like it.
I haven't seen Blade 2. Well, have I seen Blade 2? Yeah, I've seen Blade 2.
I wasn't a fan of it, but
Well, there are three Blade movies, and they all run together. I don't. Uh,
the first one's okay.
yeah.
I really barely remember the second one, and the third one is horrible.
The best thing I've ever heard about Blade is the actress who was in the first movie, Neba Wright.
Mhm.
Um, was in New York when the second one came out, and she went into a bookstore, and someone said, "Hey, I saw this. Can't wait to see Blade 2." And she said, "There's a second one."
Oh.
Didn't even have any idea.
Ooh.
Yeah, yeah.
Yikes.
Well, I think he really, really grabbed on to people, with or he got the praises of the critical community with Pan's Labyrinth,
Yes.
um, which is a movie that a lot of people like more than I did.
I'm one of
Uh,
them.
uh, but I do like his work. I can't say that a lot. I can't say that he's because Crimson Peak was fine. I like how it looks. I had some issues with the story.
Crimson Peak.
Um,
I've only seen that once too in the theater, and oof, oof, oof. I loved it, but I mean the look of it contributes so much, and there is some
to me, it was more
difficulty with
to
the
me it was
plot.
more style over substance.
Yeah, the story was a little windy
Mhm.
and didn't really, I think, make a lot of sense, but
Right.
I didn't really care.
And I have not. I have yet to see Pinocchio. I haven't seen Pinocchio yet.
Oh, I loved Pinocchio. Oh, I loved Pinocchio.
Not the Disney remake. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about
No,
he made his
Del
own
Toro, he
version.
made a stop motion one.
Right. Right.
Because he was originally on to direct the live action one,
Mhm.
or a live action one.
Pinocchio
And,
doesn't need to be live action.
well, he was going to do a live action one. And they were proceeding, and then I think something happened that then Disney was doing theirs with Zemeckis,
Mhm.
and his got canceled. But then it got picked back up by an animation house, and they're like, "Hey, would you want to do it like this?" And he's like, "Yeah." So they did it as stop motion, and it's one of the most beautiful stop motion films I think I've ever seen.
You've seen the Del Toro version.
Yeah,
I've seen the Disney remake.
yeah.
They changed the ending. He doesn't become a real boy. Jiminy Cricket just says, "Some people say," and I was like, "Oh, screw you."
um, the Del Toro version, um, I don't want to spoil it for you.
Okay.
There's so much that goes on that justifies
Mhm.
how things are different
Mhm.
that I think work in its favor.
Yeah. Yeah, I haven't seen
Um,
that one.
um,
And we both like Nightmare Alley.
oh, I loved Nightmare Alley.
Yeah.
I
Um,
genuinely love Shape of Water.
mhm.
Um,
Again, another movie that you can imagine how one of the Hollywood hack directors would have taken this story and made it very polite. He does
yeah.
not make it polite.
No.
He doesn't. He does what he wants to do, and I so appreciated it. I appreciated all of it.
Yeah, his when he has a vision, no one will compromise it.
Right.
Which,
By the way, if you love cats, don't watch that movie.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Hmm.
But anyway,
But Cronos,
um, this thing, um, I call it Mexican vampire movie because it's
not a vampire movie.
he refers to it as a take on a traditional vampire story.
Yeah.
So it's not, Count Dracula or, Cain and Lilith or any of that kind of, you know
Right.
Vampire Diaries, Interview with a Vampire kind of a vampire, but they are they're immortals who have to drink blood to live.
They're only vampires to the point that they drink that they actually drink blood. That's it. They don't bite people on the neck or anything like that.
Well, that's I that's just, they could,
Mhm.
but a vampire doesn't actually have to do that. It's just,
Right.
I guess, that they kind of went with that. I
Mhm.
like that more recent ones just show them like tearing out throats.
Right.
Like instead of being like two little pinpricks so that they don't have to show too much violence, it's now like,
Okay. Are
oh
you a
wait,
vampire or are you a werewolf? One or the other. You can't
well,
have
if you're
both.
not a wolf and you're still tearing into people's necks, then I guess you're a vampire. Um,
A
but
vampire's a hairless werewolf.
well, um, and
It's interesting though how they get there because um, it's really interesting how they get there because he's at a New Year's Eve party and a guy cuts himself and he runs to the bathroom and he bleeds on the counter and Jesus witnesses this and when the guy runs out he gets on his knees and starts licking the blood off
well,
of the
well,
counter.
first he's gonna try to get it off of the counter. He was
Mhm,
trying to get it all together and get it on the counter
mhm.
so that he could just kind of drink it up and be done. But then somebody comes out of the stall and washes it off.
Yeah.
There's only this little bit on the floor that
Damn it.
he starts to lick, and then in comes Ron Perlman's Angel
Mhm.
and kicks him in the face.
Uncle LaGuardia,
Yes.
guardian angel. You know. Well, yeah, it's funny though. You're watching ostensibly a Mexican. You're watching a Mexican film, and then all of a sudden Ron Perlman comes into it, and it's like, okay, wait a minute.
Speaking English.
Speaking English, and you're kind of into it. It's a Mexican film, and Ron Perlman. It's like all of a sudden Ron Perlman just rolls through this movie, and
But
it's
I
just
I love the disruption that he causes
Mhm.
because of his English and Americanness.
Yeah,
It's such a
brutish
oh,
Americanness.
very well. That's American. It's kind of redundant, I think. British and American, but the
I love what he says. I love what he says when he finds out what the device is. Oh come on! All the guy does is piss and shit, and he wants to live forever.
right.
He wants to live longer.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah. This it. I love the fact that this has uh, allowances for organic humor.
yeah,
Um,
a lot of these
it's
films tend to take themselves so seriously.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
and there's no room for like comedy or even just a little giggle. Even let the right one in. You get to smile a little bit at the end.
yeah, yeah.
When
Well, and you get
she eats his bullies.
right, right. And it's funny. It's funny because this could have been so melodramatic and all these flourishes and big score and all this.
Yeah,
It's very
and
matter of fact.
yeah, and there could have been a lot more like weeping and gnashing of teeth from Mercedes, or
Right. From the
the
kid.
yeah. I mean the they just kind they he doesn't over sentimentalize anything.
And he doesn't embellish a lot of religious stuff.
Right.
When he dies at the end, there are no crosses.
No.
There's no religious implements. He just dies in his bed surrounded by the two people who love him most.
Mm-hmm.
I like that.
Yeah.
I like that.
With weird albino skin and
Yeah. Yeah. Weird gray skin, which grius means gray.
mm-hmm.
Um, that weird skin. He's finally, you know,
Right.
because
And the sun does hurt him.
Yes, yes. And the search for immortality is such a it's a difficult life to live, we realize.
Well, he recognizes that really, really
Yeah, he
quickly.
does. He does. He
Like
does.
he's has the device. De la Guardia's dead. He got away from Angel.
Mhm,
He's with Mercedes. He's with Aurora.
mhm,
He could live forever, but
mhm.
he's not willing to sacrifice his humanity for his life.
Right. Right.
So, because once you start just murdering people to eat them, are you
Mhm.
really still a human?
What life are you living?
Right. So he sees that, and because he said he'll destroy the thing before he gives it to De La Guardia, and he's like,
Yeah.
"Yeah, if you do that, you'll die."
Mhm.
And knowing that, he smashes it with a rock,
Right.
kills
Right.
the bug that's inside of it,
Mhm.
that's been
It's been
replacing.
feeding it.
It's basically like a weird dialysis machine.
It looks like a
Um,
slug.
yeah, or like a cockroach or something like that.
Yeah.
There's if you look at, I think there's wings. It's gross.
Yeah.
It's
A lot of this movie's gross. Um,
but I appreciate
and
that
I
because
appreciate what it
he
is.
the way that he did the effect. He did all the effects himself.
Mhm.
He like like uh um like Peter Jackson and George Lucas before him, he had to start his own makeup and effects company to get what he needed for
Right.
his film. Um, all of this is his own design because there was no special effects house in Mexico City.
Yeah.
In all of Mexico,
Mhm.
apparently. And he didn't have the budget to outsource, so he did it himself.
Yeah.
And
It's a little
it's,
film.
yeah, but
It's not.
the
It,
effects are better than most of the things you saw in big budget crap in 1992.
right. Right. It's the writing.
Yeah.
I always come down to the writing. This is a very Faustian
Mm-hmm.
story. The idea that you're going to get immortality, but
But yeah.
and I like the idea that you have these two old men who are fighting over this. One has the device, and the other has the instructions.
Right.
I love that.
Yeah.
You know, just and even when you have the instructions, they're still a toll to be paid here.
Yeah.
You know, they're still a toll to be paid with this
Yeah.
device.
Although the old man fight in this does not it pales in comparison to the old man fight at the end of Up,
Right. Right.
which I think is the superlative old man fight in film. Um,
Which, not to nitpick about Up, but that pilot, that old guy, the Christopher Plummer character,
mhm.
that guy should have been about 130.
Yeah, I've always wondered that. I'm like, even if he's 10 years older, he's still in his 90s.
Right. Right.
Like, and he's been living on his own in this unfarmable region of
Right.
Argentina. Like, how is he
But
living?
this is a movie about a house that floats away on balloons. I
Well,
mean,
that's true. See,
I can't
you gotta. I mean, it's like Mystery Science Theater 3000. You just remember, it's just a show. You should really
mhm,
just relax.
just relax.
Um,
But I liked Cronos because it's intelligent. It's trying to deal with this situation as it might actually happen.
and he doesn't back away from any
It
of the
doesn't back away
emotions.
from any of the emotions. Not at all. Not at all.
That's a hallmark of all of his work. Oddly, Pacific Rim included.
Yeah.
Um, I never thought that I would say that there's like overt emotional content in Pacific Rim, but yeah, I mean, even there, uh,
Speaking of visual effects,
oof, yeah,
yeah.
that was a hell of a picture. Um, but all the way up through Pinocchio, he understands his audience, and he understands he doesn't underestimate anybody.
No.
In my estimation, he probably overestimates a lot of the American audience.
Yeah.
Um, but that's just my
I think a
take.
lot of this stuff, I think a lot of that stuff comes from needing to be able to make the projects that he wants to.
Yeah.
I don't really think he was angling to make Blade 2.
No,
I don't
but
think he was.
he's obviously he's a huge comic book
Yeah,
nerd. He owns two houses. Do you know this?
I didn't know that.
He owns two houses next door to each other. One where he lives, and the other one where he keeps all of his shit.
Wow. I should look into that.
He has a second mansion that all he has is all of his collectibles and his the things that he's made and the things that he's bought all over the years. His comic books are in their own climate controlled room. All of his effects, everything is in this other house that he just goes over to. I think his office is over there, and like his home, he has like a home studio, like a mixing, editing bay, and stuff like that. But he has a whole house for all of his shit.
Basically, he's doing what every other filmmaker would love to be able to do.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So I love that about him. I saw there's a tour of it on, I want to say, the Criterion edition of The Devil's Backbone,
Hmm.
or maybe Pan's Labyrinth. I'm not sure. I think it was Devil's Backbone. But it takes you through, and it's glorious.
Yeah.
It is. But I think he was happy with doing
Yeah.
Blade 2 because he does love comics so much.
Yeah.
I'm sure he probably would have picked a different property if
Mhm.
he had his choice. If he had the clout that he has now, he would have just been able to make Hellboy
Yeah.
before he got to make Hellboy.
Because Hellboy was. I love
I
Hellboy.
love Hellboy, and Hellboy 2: The Golden Army's even better.
And they got it right.
Yeah.
You got it right. Because if you want to see how. If you want to see how a lesser director would have done it, watch the remake.
Yeah. Regrettably, yes.
Yeah.
I have to give David Harbour credit for that. He did what
He
he
did
could.
fine.
He
He
did
did
what
what he
he
could.
could with what he had.
Hmm.
And I think in another circumstance, he would have been wonderful in that role.
It was just a very ugly film.
Yeah, yeah.
It's a very ugly, nasty little film. And
it was a hack job to start. Like, it wasn't. As soon as I found out Del Toro wasn't involved,
Yeah.
I wanted nothing. I still don't think I've seen more than 20 minutes of it.
You know what? A lot of people have said that. A lot of people have said, okay, since Del Toro and Ron Perlman were not involved in it, I have no interest in it at all.
Yeah. If they had at least been like executive producers,
Hmm.
signed off on it,
Hmm.
I
I don't
would
know
have
who
been
directed that.
I would have been like, okay, even if you look it up, you still won't know. Um, sorry. Yes. um, but with
Neil Marshall?
yeah, whoever that is, but with everybody clamoring for a Hellboy 3 from Del Toro and Perlman, and the studio who owns the rights going, no, let's just remake the first one with different people.
Yeah.
It's like, wait, why?
Wait, what?
You have people who are actively asking you for a sequel to a property that you have.
Yeah.
You don't have to buy any rights or anything. A lot of this is going to be profit.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
come on, guys. No, we're just going to reboot it because David Harbour's hot right now. It's like, no, guys, come on.
He doesn't have to do this. Um, Del Toro's in a position where he has clout. He can do whatever he wants.
Yeah. Except Hellboy 3, apparently.
Except Hellboy 3.
And a live-action Pinocchio.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean...
I think, though, he started developing Pinocchio before The Shape of Water.
Yeah.
And it got canceled before The Shape of Water. And then he swept the Oscars. And then people were like,
okay.
hey, could you? And he already said yes to the animation.
Yeah.
So, which I think actually Netflix was like, hey, do you want to come do it like this? And they were like, he was like, yeah, shit, yeah.
Why not?
If I get to do it, yeah, why not? And it's very much his film.
Mm.
And
I haven't seen it yet.
I know. And I'm waiting for you to watch.
We're in the middle of screener season. We're in the middle of a lot of movies that come to us.
Waiting for you to watch that, and I'm waiting for you to watch Everything Everywhere All at Once.
And I've been sitting here and, watching all these movies that come to me. I swear those are sitting there waiting for me. I just haven't gotten there yet.
Uh-huh.
Excuses.
Yeah. But yeah, that's all I have for it is very clearly the work of an emergent.
Yeah.
I hesitate
it's
to
a very crude first film from a director whose work would eventually get more polished. You can tell it's his first film.
You can tell it's his first film, but you can also tell the immense talent that he has and the vision that he's moving with. Just that device,
even in a very small space.
Right, that device itself is so intricate and so clever that it would have never been thought up by an American.
Right.
It's because it's an antique. See, we don't know how to deal with that.
Right.
But what do we have coming up?
Well, next week is
The Godfather.
Next week is The Godfather, the 50th anniversary. We did an episode on this. We recorded an episode of this in March, and we had a technical problem, so we had to do it again. Which I'm glad, because we've already recorded the episode.
And I like that one better.
It's much better because there's a lot more to it. I read the book, so there's a lot more discussion in it than your standard,
Right. And after that, which, again, Godfather, though, Christmas movie.
Mm-hmm.
I count it.
There's a scene that takes place at Christmas.
There's a huge chunk that takes place at Christmas.
Right.
One of the most pivotal scenes.
Yeah.
And after that, I'm actually doing there's Christmas decorations in the background. Moonstruck. Because I love Moonstruck, and it's great. And
just want to talk about it.
Yeah, and it takes place around Christmas. And then we're doing our annual medley that has not yet been set, so we will let you know what's going on with that. You can find all of our back episodes of the podbaydorspodcast.wordpress.com. You can listen to us on iTunes and YouTube. Hit the like, subscribe, and notification buttons there. You can find us on Twitter, if that's still a thing when you're listening, at pod_bay. Copy and paste that over on Patreon, and that's our handle there. We thank you very much for joining us, and the Pod Bay doors are now closed.
The mission has been completed.
Was the night before Christmas when all through the castle my monsters were having a Yuletide hassle. The tree was all trimmed in ghoulish things like werewolf fangs and vampire wings.
It was a monster's holiday.
But they were up to no good.
It was a monster's holiday.
Didn't act like good monsters
It was a
should.
monster's holiday.
They found themselves a new
It was a
prey.
monster's
They
holiday.
planned to rob Santa's sleigh. They were making a list and checking it twice. Frankenstein wanted a shiny new trike, a new chain for Janusz, a brace for Igor's back, a speed shaver for Wolfman, a new cape for Drac.
Monsters holiday.
They were up to no good,
It was a monsters holiday.
didn't act like good monsters
It was
should.
a monsters holiday.
They'd found themselves a new prey.
Monsters
They
holiday.
planned to rob Santa's sleigh. The mummy was to signal from the castle roof at the very first sound of a reindeer hoof. As Santa slid down the chimney wall, the zombies were to make off with sleigh and all. From beyond the moat there arose such a clatter, I jumped to the window to see what was the matter. Like a bolt of lightning it happened so quick, and there in our midst stood old Saint Nick. He began to dig down deep in his sack, and came up with the traction for Igor's back. Drac caught his cape, Frankie's trike made him behave. Even Wolfman was happy, now he can shave.
Monsters holiday.
And all ended well,
Monsters holiday.
and Santa was really swell.
Monsters holiday.
No need to rob Santa's sack.
Monsters holiday.
Maybe next year he'll come back. So the children everywhere were spared the grief of losing their presents to a monster slave thief. Now the monsters love Santa and say they'll behave, and never again rob sleighs or graves.
Monsters holiday.
Igor, what do you think of Santa now?
Holiday.
Santa good! What was that he said as he drove out of sight? Merry Christmas to all, and to all a good night. Jingle bells, jingle all the way. Oh, what fun it is to ride in a one-wolf open sleigh. Well, dashing through the snow. Where is that reindeer with the red nose? On Donner, on Blitzen, on Dancer and Vixen.